Hello everyone, Mr. Lipchick here, and today we're going to discuss critical infrastructure as it relates to the mission of Homeland Security. Terrorists and other enemies of our country will usually target critical infrastructure. Critical infrastructure is defined as facilities, services, and installations deemed critical for the functioning of a community or society, such as transportation systems, water systems, power lines, schools, post offices, and prisons. And the purpose for doing so is to cause the greatest disruption to our government, society, and economy as they possibly can. For example, in 1942, a German U-boat surfaced off the coast of Long Island, New York. This was an early submarine. 8 German spies came ashore with explosives and $175,000 in cash. Their mission was to attack economic targets in order to slow down American war production. All were eventually captured and 6 were executed for espionage. The Department of Homeland Security has identified key infrastructure sectors that must be protected. These include food, water, agriculture, health systems, emergency services, energy, transportation, information and telecommunications, banking and finance, energy transportation, chemical, defense, postal and shipping, and national monuments and icons. Yes, national monuments are important because of their symbolic nature and the psychological impact that it could have if one of them were destroyed. The Department of Homeland Security will seek to identify vulnerabilities in these systems. Terrorists see infrastructure as legitimate military targets. Security managers should plan backup systems, which is referred to as redundancy, and plan for the possible failure of those systems as well. Ethical considerations come into play when a business or industry will lose profits by implementing security measures. The inspection of cargo holds of the airlines has become a contentious issue, as this involves additional time and resources. And this has to be measured against the risk of a terrorist planting a bomb in the cargo hold. In their efforts to stop terrorists, security specialists have attempted to identify trends, styles, and modes of operation used by terrorists. They can vary over time and can often be identified with a particular terror group. As time moves forward, terrorists learn to overcome anti-terror measures, and they are quick to take advantage of new technologies. They are resilient and are showing the ability to recover after long periods of dormancy, that is, long periods of inactivity. For example, the Shining Path guerrillas of Peru have undergone a resurgence since being suppressed by the government in the early 1990s. Terrorist capabilities are increasing as technological improvements are becoming more available over time. Critical infrastructure. Typical modes of terrorism include bombings, hostage taking and kidnapping, hijackings and skyjackings, cyber terrorism, and extortion, causing, threatening harm to people unless they pay you money. Also basic threats: do what I say or I will harm you. The modus operandi of a terror group is the preferred method necessary for carrying out the act of a criminal or terrorist group. An example might be shooting, for instance. One group might use firearms. A signature is performances or behavior that are not necessary for completing the act. And for example, shooting victims in the head. Okay, that would be known as a signature in a way of identifying that a particular terror group did this. Modus operandi and signatures help to identify the terrorist groups so that they can be combated. Copycats are individuals who, for their reasons of their own, commit similar crimes or acts. The reason I have a picture on the right of the Zodiac killer from the late 60s and early 70s, there was a man in New York. The Zodiac was never caught. Okay, they have some suspicions as to who it was. Some investigators think it was multiple people. However, a man in New York went on a copycat killing spree for his own reasons, and he, pretended to be the Zodiac. Okay, he was, however, captured. Fortunately, sometimes they seek to disguise their own motives by copying a certain activity by a violent individual or terrorist group. Crusaders are individuals who agree with the violent act and strike out in support of it. And both are equal threats to homeland security. Behavioral cues analysis of terrorism consists of the fact that every assault happens at least twice, once in the mind and again upon execution. That energy follows thought. People have to think out how they're going to accomplish the goal. Offenders must have both the opportunity and the desire to complete the act. So there has to be something pushing them towards this behavior, some strong emotional component. Most offenders prefer a cloak of secrecy to try to disguise their internal thinking. And the wisdom of this, of the people who do this for a living, can be summarized in know thyself and know the enemy. Okay, know who this person is, and you will know what how their next plan of attack is going to come off. Unconventional criminals require unconventional strategies. Okay, so sometimes it's very difficult to understand where they're coming from and what they're doing, but the investigators will always try to get inside of the mind through their behavioral cues. Okay, threat assessments. A threat assessment is evaluating areas of the critical infrastructure that are vulnerable to attack and planning for it. A risk management team should be created. The team should develop a written policy for response. And the team should train for that response and constantly reevaluate the plan and the threat. And this is really anywhere in any group of people who are running a large public facility, from a tunnel entrance to a hospital. There should be some assessment as to what type of terror threat exists, and this should be done in a formal process. A living risk assessment is a risk assessment that is constantly growing, evolving, and changing to the changing environment. So it is responding to the events in society which are constantly changing, as we know. It's an approach of openness and willingness to change in response to new developments. And it is the only way to anticipate and respond to possible threats. If you develop one plan and just stick to that and never change it, developments in the whole area of terrorism are going to get past you. You're not going to have an effective plan. Your plan will be outdated. It'll be anticipated by the terrorists, and you will lose. Quarterly risk assessments are to be conducted every 3 months. And global attention risk assessments involve working with all stakeholders and first responders in the community. So that is sitting down with the police and whatever other groups are involved in dealing with this particular risk. to your institution. Trend-based risk assessments are an in-depth look at local, national, and international terrorist trends. And all four risk assessments can and should be applied together simultaneously. So, to summarize, terrorists will often target critical infrastructure, which is essential to the operation of our government and economy. The Department of Homeland Security will seek to identify vulnerabilities in that infrastructure. The Department of Homeland Security will also seek to evaluate the risk to that infrastructure by studying the modes, trends, and signatures of terrorists. And emergency planners must continually evaluate, plan, and train for attacks on our nation's infrastructure. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to seeing you in the live lesson, and I hope that you have a great day. Take care.